Ah, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the other side of the coin. Firstly, that's the number one rule. Firstly, welcome back to the other side of the coin. Look, I'm actually blown away by this particular video, and I thought we'll do a reaction on this video. If you haven't seen, then you get the privilege to see this with me right now. I'm this particular video by Football Meta. I think they're known as Meta Football, something like that. I'm pretty sure. Let me just quickly have a look at the correct name so that, yeah, Football Meta. I think that's the thing. Football Meta. They've got 172 subscribers as of now. It's the first time I've heard of these guys. Some of you guys have tagged me in this particular, video on Twitter, basically putting the video and then tagging me on it. And I haven't had the chance to see it, but finally, earlier this morning, I did get the opportunity to watch it. And you know what? It's perfectly explains the issues we're having with low blocks, and I suppose not being able to score, and how the opposition is always so comfortable defending against us. And Football Meta just like fully describes and illustrates this whole situation, compares it with Man City, which is interesting to look at. I know Man City are a team that are so far and above us at the moment, beyond us at the moment, but I think it's a good way to compare what they're doing and what we're doing, and try and understand, do we have the right personnel to carry out what we're trying to do? So let's have a look at this video, ladies and gentlemen, from the get-go. The first few minutes, he talks about many other things as well. How obviously, you would have seen in recent times the stats in regards to the number of shots. We've got a lot of shots. We take a lot of shots, but our shot accuracy is poor. So, Football Meta, this particular individual, he talks about that aspect of the game as well, how that's hurting us. But now we're going to talk about the way we build up, the way we set up in attack, and what happens in a low block, and what happens when oppositions, they have good defending, or somewhat of a defensive structure, which kind of nullifies us. So let's have a look at this.
It comes down to a difference in play style between the two teams. Firstly, let's look at both teams' structure in the final third. While Chelsea line up with a 3-4-2-1, their offensive structure is much more resemblant of a 4-2-3-1, with Colwill and Malo Gusto acting as the fullbacks, with Caicedo and Gallagher forming a double pivot in the centre.
Just to pause here, for anyone that's still remotely thinking, now we play with the three at the back, we don't actually. We don't, and we've seen it in recent matches. I was just under the impression that Colwell's not going to play as a out-and-out left back. He's not going to go bomb up and down. But in the match against Bournemouth, we actually saw Colwell bomb up. And whether that's something Pochettino wants, which he did say post-match that he doesn't want that, but that's what we've been seeing. We've actually seen Colwell play as a left back, and he's not a left back. So that's one of the first issues that I found quite evident when this illustration is drawn out.
This means that when entering the opposition's half, Chelsea have 6 players active during build-up, and 4 players further up on the defensive line. We can see that here in this clip: the back 4, the double pivot, and the front 4. This is already a slightly different structure to Man City, as their 3-2-5 shape means they instantly have an extra player in attack.
See, this is the first distinct difference. We've got 4 in attack when we are building up, whereas Man City have 5 in attack. So numerically, you've got that advantage. And I know this video progressively will show that Chelsea eventually has 5, but there's a difference in that 5 as well. But already here you can see, why the need to have 6 in the build-up when we could potentially do with 1 less. Because I feel like this is probably contributing to the slowness in our build-up as well. So I just feel like when there's that many players in the build-up, there's not enough options up front. And this is probably why our defenders are looking up and thinking, where am I going to pass? And they're just too slow with the distribution.
And use 1 less player during build-up. Here's a screenshot of this 3-2-5 shape. If you want to know more about this style of play, then check out this video on the WM. and all the advantages that it brings. With Chelsea, as they gain ground, Malo Gusto will push up on the back line, forming a front five and adopting a similar shape to what we see with Man City. But the way this front five is created is slightly different and
Although it's the same shape, you'll notice that we've got a V happening in the middle, whereas Man City have got sort of like a A shape or a W shape, as you can see, which is key, which will be demonstrated in this video. They seem to have players in the half spaces, but we don't. We seem to have that number 10.
leads to a few different scenarios. While Man City's front five is with Haaland in the centre, two players in the half spaces and the wingers out wide in the shape of a W, Chelsea's front five is formed of the front two of Jackson and Sterling, Malo Gusto and Chilwell out wide, and Fernandes between the lines. As a result, Chelsea's positioning is often much more flat on the defensive line, with much less support between the lines.
And it's not just flat. You look at the caliber of players Man City have in their five in that W shape, and you look at the caliber of players that we have, especially Chilwell being utilized on the left side. You need technical players. You need players that's going to be very comfortable with their first touch, that's going to be very comfortable to take on their man, that's going to be very comfortable at times with their back against the defender to be able to turn and distribute. Whereas Man City, they'll either have a Jack Grealish there, they'll have, a Phil Foden at times, when KDB is back, and so on and so forth. And in previous seasons, they had on the right side Riyad Mahrez, whereas we've got Malo Gusto, who I feel Malo Gusto is technically okay, but his output from an attacking position is probably not at the level where Reece James basically delivers for us on that side.
This is also exaggerated by the fact that Fernandes wants to be on the ball as much as possible. And if he isn't receiving passes between the lines, he often drops deep to receive the ball from the midfielders, vacating this space and making it much harder to progress.
And this is an issue. We've seen it in recent times where Enzo Fernandez, he'll play further up, and it's very difficult to get the ball to him because, as you can see, our two players are stuck to the defenders in a flat line. Two attackers that are stuck to the defenders in a flat line. So that's Sterling and Nicholas Jackson. So Enzo Fernandez is generally covered by quite a lot of opposition players. So he has to drop deep, and that's when he looks better. That's when Enzo Fernandez on the ball looks a lot more dynamic for us as opposed to waiting for the ball to come to him as a number 10. This clearly demonstrates that Enzo is naturally not a KDB type of a player, number 10. And even for Man City, if KDB was in that situation, he'd be outnumbered. So this is the tactical difference that Poch really needs to identify, that we need, if we're going to play with a striker like Nicholas Jackson, then we need him to be up front and not have another attacker like Sterling be next to him to occupy another CB. We really do need Sterling and maybe another player to pretty much mimic what City's doing in order to break down low blocks, or else opposition will always find it very easy against us, because Enzo Fernandez is literally the only player trying to orchestrate everything from the middle, and it's just not going to happen.
We can see this perfectly in this clip here against Nottingham Forest. As Chelsea rotate from left to right, Fernandes has dropped deep to receive the ball. This means as the ball goes out wide to Malo Gusto, he has no support around him. And Forest's midfield is doing an excellent job at splitting Chelsea's attack in half, as the front four is up against the back five, and the midfield three are behind the midfield. This gives Malo Gusto few options.
There you go. You can clearly see here exactly what I've just said. The fact that Sterling and Nicholas Jackson are so close to the defenders, and all our midfielders are behind or in front of the opposition line. So you can see the opposition back line. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they've got a set of 4. There's literally no option for Malo Gusto in the middle. Yeah, I mean, from this point, where is Malo Gusto meant to go? If he crosses it in, we're outnumbered. Sterling and Jackson are outnumbered. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders to deal with. Well, 3 definitely. and you've got the other one out wide. And Malo Gusto doesn't have anyone, just off of Sterling and Jackson in between. Everyone else is behind the second line of the opposition. So in here, Malo Gusto will have to naturally go back or has to put in a hopeful cross, which quite possibly is not even going to reach our player, and it's going to be easily defended. And this is why we seem to have so many crosses. People get so excited about we send in so many crosses, but we send in a lot of hopeful crosses, which makes no sense.
And is dispossessed after attempting a dribble. We can get another
good
example of
Malo
this
Gusto
flat
actually
shape
tries
by
to take
looking
the
at this
player on.
clip against West Ham. Again, as Chelsea rotate from flank to flank, their attacking line is completely flat against West Ham's defenders, with no staggered position between the lines, meaning they are not forcing any West Ham players to make a choice, and it's easy for them to follow their man. With Fernandes...
That's a huge point. When you're in a flat line, you're not forcing the opposition to commit to anything. They can maintain the flat line. But as Man City's W shape, it's not a flat line because the two attacking players just behind the striker are in the half spaces, which then forces the opposition to come into those inside forwards, basically, which then allows Haaland spacing behind and the wingers as well spacing behind.
And Gallagher not connecting defense and attack, you again end up with this split down the middle. And
this is the next big issue. When you've got players like Gallagher in midfield, City have got Rodri, they've got Bernardo Silva, they've got, right now KDB is injured. A player like Gallagher in midfield is just not going to be able to find those key passes. He's not going to try and penetrate through the middle. This is why when people are talking about Gallagher, they get so defensive that, oh no, but he's been performing so well. It's not about performing well off the ball. We have a lot of the possession. What do we do with the possession? Nothing. And I'm not just saying it's all on Gallagher. Not at all. There's definitely an issue with how Poch is setting us up. And as I've mentioned, Chilwell on that left side is not helping either. Hopefully that stops. Obviously that stopped against Bournemouth, but we'll see whether that completely stops. It doesn't help having Chilwell there. You need technical players there. It doesn't help having Enzo Fernandez as a sole sort of player playing just off of Sterling and Nicholas Jackson because he gets outnumbered. So obviously the structure is incorrect by Pochettino, but at the same time, the personnel that we have, they're not good enough to break down a low block.
Chelsea aren't outnumbering the defense and are not creating any issues for West Ham. Let's now compare this shape to what we see with Man City.
Check this out.
Here's a quick example of their shape against Fulham, the 3-2 build-up structure and the front five. But notice how only Haaland is pressed up against the back line, pushing them back because of this threat of a ball over the top, while the other four players are occupying the space between the lines.
Yeah.
This slightly more staggered shape causes a lot of issues for the back line, as they have further to travel to put pressure on the opposing player, meaning they need to step off their line and make a choice. For example, if Walker passes the ball out wide, it creates a gap for a run into the half space. If Walker passes it into the center, it frees up space in behind. This shape means Man City can attack anywhere they want, and is much more balanced and unpredictable, as at any moment they could move either centrally or out wide. This is reflected in their attacking zones, with their preferred attacking routes being balanced between left, center, and right. While Chelsea, on the other hand, are much more...
This is telling. Look at this. This is so telling. This is why we are always going on that right side. Because of that imbalanced structure up front. Flat, just so flat, and not having those technical players either. Sterling is the only one who's penetrating at times the opposition from that right side. And this is probably why, because that left side, we don't have anyone as good as Sterling to take the players on, or the ability of Sterling to receive the ball, turn the defender and run. So there's multitude of issues. One, we are flat. Our structure, when the attackers are flat against the defenders, which makes it very easy on the for the opposition defenders. Two, We lack certain technical players in midfield and out wide on that left side. We'll see whether Mudryk continues. Mudryk, so far in that match against Bournemouth, showed that he has the quality to receive the ball and turn, just like Sterling. And this is clear. The third point, 42% on the right side, is because Sterling is the one that's driving that area. That's where we get most of our success. But look at Man City, balanced all across, because they've got supreme players all across the field, and their structure by Pep Guardiola is just simply brilliant.
Imbalanced to the right flank. While both teams' objective is to form a front five in the final third, Man City's way of creating this shape is much more intuitive, as they have their key players in all of these areas. Chelsea, on the other hand, rotate their position a lot more frequently, with Jackson often dropping deep and Fernandes pushing up.
And we've seen this in almost every game. Jackson dropping deep, because if Jackson doesn't drop deep, one, he's not going to get the ball, and two, we're not going to progress in the attacking phase. He has to drop deep and link up with the midfielders, link up with the wingers. Yeah, one of the issues a lot of people seem to have is, why doesn't Jackson end up being in the box? I never see him in the box. Because we're not utilizing him like the way Man City utilizes Haaland. And I know they're two different players. I still believe Jackson can be a particular player that can have solid hold-up. Maybe not as great as Haaland, of course, or as polished as Haaland, but we need to utilize him in that manner. But we can't, because who are the two players that City have in the half space? Who are they going to be for us? We can potentially have that as Sterling and maybe Mudryk. And this is why Nkunku was huge for us. And Nkunku's miss is massive. But we do need to find a solution. I feel like even Ian Martson in the preseason showed in those half spaces how good he can be. And we've not utilized him one bit. So us not doing that and having, as you can see on the Chelsea side, Jackson and Sterling pressed up against the defenders and having Chilwell out wide, it's a recipe for disaster.
Up. Sterling moving out wide and Gusto moving centrally. There's a lot more moving parts in this Chelsea team. And given that the whole team is only now starting to get to know each other, there could be some growing pains they need to get through before they can fully take advantage of these movements. Quick side note, I found it interesting how Chelsea looked more dangerous against Nottingham Forest when Palmer came on off the bench. And his positioning was much more resemblant of what you would expect.
Interesting how Palmer, as Football Meta has said over here, because Cole Palmer comes from the school of Pep Guardiola. So he understands how to break down low blocks and where you need to place yourself. We need Pochettino to quickly coach our players to be in the right positions in order to break down the low blocks. I'm not surprised that Cole Palmer seems to have already impressed, and I think he needs to start. For us, he 100% needs to start. We cannot have him coming off the bench anymore. We need to start the game in the front foot.
From a player developed under Guardiola, often sitting in this square between the fullback, centre-back and midfield line, creating gaps for Chelsea's other players to exploit. But other than these slight structural differences...
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, it's clear. I think this video is a clear indication that there's a reason why we're not winning games. There's a reason why we're not scoring goals as well. Of course, some of our players, their shooting accuracy is a huge one. We've been shooting a lot, but we've not been accurate. But there is a deeper issue, I think, that Pochettino definitely needs to get to the bottom of. And perhaps we need to look at some of the personnel we're using as well. A couple of them I've already mentioned. Structure, as I've said, can't be playing Enzo Fernandez in a number 10 position from the get-go. Let him play a little bit deeper and drive forward. Got to start playing Cole Palmer instead of Gallagher. 100%, I feel he's going to be able to open up the space for Sterling and Nicholas Jackson. I think we need to stop utilizing Ben Chilwell on the left side. Hopefully that's been done, done and dusted against the Bournemouth game. We played Mudryk, and I think someone like Mudryk, we need to keep on giving him that time in the left wing position so that we can create that structure that Man City is doing in order to win games against teams that are going to defend. Now, I'm not saying, we can't just be copying Man City. It's not about copying. It's about how do you ensure to have more players in the attacking area so that the opposition is unable to easily mark you off. Right now, what we're doing, we are sending more players, but our structure is wrong. So this is something to look at. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know what your thoughts are on this particular video. For me, I found this video extremely interesting, and it kind of, really opened up the eyes as to where things need to change. And if we do that, hopefully we can see some positive results. Smash the like button. If you're here for the first time, subscribe, hit the bell notification to stay in touch with all my content. Until next time, everyone, take care. See ya.